Shelley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Jupiter, our Saturn day. Ascendant is 0 degree Cancer, ruled by the moon at 12 degrees Aries. Mars, ruler of the moon, is in 0 degree Aquarius, and midheaven is ruled by Jupiter, retrograde 18 degrees Cancer. So, this episode, I usually don't even have a trigger because it's kind of like trigger everything on my episodes and my entire podcast. Um, but this one, I do have a trigger. Um, and I'm posting that in favor of people that have experienced same things. I'm going to talk about certain things I saw, and then the fact that that was somehow read or reminded of, even though I never spoke about this, um, as a particular detail. I'm not going to mention that detail, but a particular detail that was present from what I saw. Um, that was pinpointed, and this particularly was something that I received as I spoke up, and this is something that's common that's done to people who speak up or are exposed to these things and speak up. So this is something that I saw around when I was in high school, and when I say so, I don't mean witnessed in 3D, okay, or what people call the physical realm. And it may have pertained to some sort of um, frequency-based activity, let's say, that was happening either at the time, it would have been around the 1996. It would have been around the opening of the Dutroux case. Now that I think back, I did not know about the Dutroux case. I think maybe they spoke about something in Belgium, but I did not know anything. And then I saw something. It came with the frequency that had to do with eroticism, but there's nothing erotic about that. Trust me, I've been there. And here was what the frequency that they were trying to eroticize. Lada Tuncheva, this episode is for you. I think she's going to relate, having spoken about those things. And the time was around 1996. So think back to 2007, 1996, 2019. Those are times where there were campaigns and they affected the consciousnesses of people, attempting to get at the eros or at the psychosexual centers, um, particularly people that have had either, revolutionary parents or um, kind of parents that were not going along with the conformity of society, especially um, when it comes to complying with um, unloving relations. Let's just put it that way. Okay, but it can be other sectors. What I saw, here begin the triggers. Okay, the triggers. What I saw was women that were in a cabinet, and it wasn't even sure if they were bodies or not, and they were. It's kind of like I was seeing a man that could pick any of these women, and it wasn't even clear if these women were alive or not. And then that man wanted to experience in sexuality the experience of being a woman, but he had a lot of self-hatred. Um, I wanted to access the feminine, and he had a lot of self-hatred. Um, a lot of need to take things to extreme in a way that couldn't emotionally be met or physically even. Um, and there was certain dissociation, and it's something that affected the erotic centers. Um, and it wasn't clear where was that coming from. Um, going back in time, that would be something that I saw as a child, and the years would probably be around 1889 to 1990s. Okay, kind of like around the fall of the Soviet Union. So there could have been a campaign then. Um, and there I saw a child, a boy, that was harming particularly the genitals of a woman, and he had like erotically sadistic tendencies. Um, but it seemed that that woman was it was trying to be in a power position in the face of um, that woman or these women. And again, there was this push to extreme. Um, it was something around the sexuality. And okay, it wasn't clear how did that arrive to the mind of a child that was a girl. It was continuous pressure on the genital area. Um, I don't know where it came from or what was that consciousness seeking in the body of a child. Because I was the child that was seeing that. Um, that would later be used in around 2019 or even 2017 to 2019 um, against me because I spoke up. So there was somebody was wanted it in that I saw in the physical realm that referred to that. There was an attempt to kidnap me to ritual abuse because I spoke up about what I now understand is the trafficking ring in academia. And what I now know is ritual abuse because then I didn't understand what were these weird things, and the term, let's say, sexual harassment was not suffice to describe what was going on. Definitely, it's people think about mind control. There was something that was happening so much so that it was a fragmentation of the consciousness. Like when I talked about the Saturn Neptune being associated with my psychosis, um, indeed, Saturn was conjoining Pluto and Jupiter around COVID. 1990 it was Saturn Neptune. 2007, I don't know. Neptune ingressed into Aquarius in 1996. I don't remember where Saturn was in that, or they were coming together in like there was some co-presence or something. Um, no, or Saturn would be around then about 80. That would be, I think, more the case. It'd be like 6 years from the Soviet Union. So the ingress of Neptune, um, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of in Capricorn, and the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, um, and the Saturn Neptune right now that again people try to um, kind of scare people that speak up, um, or kind of show them that they saw that, but in ways that are really weird. These are associated with mass psychosis or attempt to cause mass psychosis. Um, but then, as to the content of what is seen, um, it could be leaking psychic content. But it's not leaking psychic content because the person is psychic, so much as that there is some sort of a conglomerate ritual done, and those images leak. Neptune is leaking, and those images leak. And they can leak into children, people, and so on and so forth. I know from survivors that they do programming, try to program people. They particularly are interested in the psychosexual aspects because those are extortion cults, and because this is the life energy, the sexual energy. Um, Around the ingress of Uranus to Taurus, I was working at a business that was dealing a lot with sex positive awareness, embodiment, and basically about self pleasure, not something that's like more than that, but that was um, definitely bringing up themes of women that felt um, the collective womb or the collective suffering that happened to women. Um, but then there was in 2019 a case of at least one person that was supposed to be healing, but he could have gone into some sort of a mind control based or seemingly psychosis situation of mind control based torture that would be activated as he was supposedly healing women and then he was raping them. So he was attuned to their traumas, but I guess it was activating his limbic system in an onset reaction that was of perpetrator nature. And the reason that I'm being so meticulously structural and scientific about it is because this is the nature of hacking into nervous systems. And those so-called urges are to do with that. Okay, they try to basically um, create congestions, energy congestions in the nervous system and life energy, and to get people addicted to patterns of harming others and trying to control those addictive compartmentalized patterns on an onset, sometimes through mind control. Um, Now, this can be, because there is such a thing as both psychic reading but also technological reading. Um, there can be cases where people are feeling, uh, um, how should I say that? They're exposed to, by the way, not mostly not volitionally, to the psychic content of people or the historical psychic content of people, and that could trigger their own limbic systems. Um, Now, why am I called to talk about this? Is because those things are happening again in society. And it can look like a zombification of society. I think Light addressed that. I've saw through several episodes of Light, Asefa being attacked by those with very familiar things. One time it would be even through what we wear. And of course, it can be that the person, let's say, um, was wearing something that was more revealing than they intended it to be. And it's not about, it's not about what someone wears. It's just something that happened to me as well. Um, it happened to me in Model UN settings. So there's a lot of trafficking codes surrounding such events that people are not aware of, and of course, neither was I. Um, and and that can be, one of the things. Another thing can be very weird readings that could only be possible in a cult-like based society. Seeing the consciousnesses of different people. Um, so and yes, and that can create all kinds of um, discourse and experiences and encounters and interactions that people don't normally mention, and those can trigger a lot of communication hang-ups, which is the issue. Okay, they try to, if people speak, they try to act against what they say. Um, and this is where this is basically when there are such attempts to affect uh, the overall nervous system of people. Um, yes, we think about United States, for example, going out of the WHO while there is ice, while there is Greenland. But that move of going out of the WHO prompted a lot of discourse in Israel, kind of like, should Israel follow going out of the WHO? And juxtaposed to that, there are competing agendas that are both internal and external. Okay, for example, in aftermath of the Second World War, Americans didn't win over the Nazis; they looted the Nazis. It's like they looted Congo for rare earth minerals, but here the rare earth minerals were the Nazi scientists themselves. So we were looting Nazis, um, and of course that affected the United States. Okay, um, doesn't mean that there weren't problems before that. It's just to show us that supposedly dissolving a conglomerate like, let's say, the Nazi, a growing empire, because Hitler really got everywhere. Um, then, but it didn't stop the Nazification and zombification of society, the occult practices, but also the people coin the term techno-fascism. Um, And okay, those things definitely exist. Um, I have to like to be very honest, I'm an astrologer and I do certain charts. Did I not wonder, wait a second, was that that guy? Was that that guy? Um, is it that person? Um, and that can create really, I'm not saying convoluted form of relations because it can create relatability that can be key to going from trauma bond to safe attachment and from cult-like society to sovereign society. Um, but the important thing that I have to say is that those things are happening within the self, and we cannot expect people to tag along. Every person has their own um, process with that, and I post that to, just like people. I remember when Lada Duncheva talked about um, masturbating to horrible things happening to women. It's something that I identified as a child and during high school, and I was even aware of having to form a sexual sovereignty before I, let's say, date or have sex with people because, and only then I would hear about cases where, a girl was infatuated with one person, and then that was used to traffic and to rape. Those things that are unfortunately quite prevalent exactly in the best schools, by the way, in the elite schools. When I went to high school, I was living with my mom and my grandmother to go to that school. And there were rituals and workings that affected nervous systems there. Um, this is something that very likely I've been surrounded by in high school and wasn't even aware of that. Um, so much so that the service that the Intifada did was that many people were not going to parties and they were not exposed to the rape drugs, for example. Um, I had a friend that was almost rape drugged, and then she comes to the police, and the police officer tried to hit on her. Now she's a very beautiful woman, but that's not that's not the setting. And I had a police officer um, that was trying to hit on me as well, and was kind of stalkerish, which is something that happened to me around the subprime crisis. Um, very weird. Um, Again, this psychosexual control is not, and I want to say something. Um, I don't find myself to be particularly kinky. Other people that can be kinky, they can practice that in safe and consensual. But to do that, they have to go through the shadow work of what the heck is that thing, because those practices are not practiced in the setting where they are consenting adults to. And this is a part of like rituals that are kind of using sex magic, but it's not really sex and it's not really magic to fragment society. And again, I think it's one of the things that inspired me to be such a sex positive person. Not because I'm a sex crazed person, and most people that talk about this issue is because there's a reason they're not busy doing. There's a reason they're not busy making love, other than talking about this issue, because we are here to address the things that block lovemaking, basically. Um, and that just prompted me to um, to talk about the alternative or to seek the alternative. Um, and at the junctures of those alternatives, there are a lot of things that are also, whether it's even hand gestures. I remember when I was just doing a channeling experiment, it was the hand gestures, so I thought nothing of it. Those hand gestures are not something, and when I stopped doing that, it was like really attempt to try to make me do, whether it was the peace sign or other hand gestures. Like unless somebody is Italian, those hand gestures are really not okay. Like I'm not Italian, so I don't know the deeper layer of the culture. But unless somebody is Italian, um, and this is sometimes how what symbolizes that some content creator is actually being used as human trafficker or used to deliver messages. When I was channeling, there was use of emojis to deliver messages, and I was just experimenting. It's like a child that learns a new language. But looking in retrospective, you can see that in the Spirit of Matter episode. Looking in retrospective, there was something that was um, pointing at certain things that were trying to take up timeline and were not exactly benevolent for society. Um, Even innocent emojis like the butterfly can denote just the butterfly, and they can denote that monarch project. And of course, confusion is paramount and is a part of those things. So I'm putting that video out there because there are a lot of people that are exposed for that or become aware that they're exposed to that um, just now. And I remember how, hearing people like Lada Sheva or other people that expose the symbolism, talking about these things was very helpful for me. Um, because first of all, because it correlates with the memory that also I had, and secondly, because it opens the door to recovery. And indeed, when it comes to self pleasure, uh, there would be urges, and I really thank Annika Lucas about that, because there would be urges to try to get people to have their sexual practices around something that is not um, there's not their authentic sexuality, had they not gone through trauma, and even infant needs that weren't met can become eroticized and create very weird things or scenarios in the psyche, and then the person would be more susceptible to that because of some sort of relational trauma that they had or that they were in the environment of. So I can't say that I know exactly these patterns, but we understand that the awareness is basically the awareness to the patterns that were malefically used to program basically child sex slaves. And that's and their handlers. And that's something that is a can of wasps. Okay, a global can of wasps. Um, but it's also an important conversation to make because this conversation leads to venues of healing, um, authenticity, sovereignty, removing of shame for people that still struggle with shame around certain things. Like your most convoluted, the most convoluted sexual weird stuff that work on somebody can be really simple. Think about it. A dead body, for example, cannot molest. It cannot. Okay. Just like, what is on with this person? Okay, I'm just talking about stuff that I saw. Um, okay, a child trying to take their power in the face of the womb, or okay, children that went through trauma when their parents were pregnant. Or trauma can be even stress, can be worry, it can be many things, and that can coincide with certain timelines that are in the collective timeline. So when we shed light into those particular really taboo stuff, then this is something that allows for regeneration and recovery of the nervous system. It absolutely alters the nature of sexual fantasy, eroticism, what we actually find nourishing. And some of those things can be really, really challenging because there is a desire to experience this setting that was disempowering as empowering, or sadistic as pleasurable, but not from sadism. And then there are attempts to try to replace the pain in pleasure, or try to. There are people that can be addicted to the use of basically sexual cues or violence in to moderate their life or behavior, and all those things that are basically um, for the most not compatible with the actual. Okay, and again, I'm being really cautious here because I don't want to disinclude people who are kinky and experience those things in kinky settings where everybody is, um, you know, satisfied or at peace with the settings. Um, but for people that know that there's not there, that there's something missing, okay, and you're gonna experience it as something missing, something not satisfying about the orgasm, something depleting, something is not. This is why I define from quite a young age, okay, my 20s, I said a good sex is something that's enjoyable before, during, and after. Now, of course, the awareness to that, you know, um, we take a look at treating acne as a aromatherapist, okay? Take a look at treating acne naturally. So the detoxification, if in the beginning there will be some pimples, in many cases there would suddenly be more pimples. And then one of the things that can cause this, if everything is right and the nutrition is improved, and the holistic reason of why person felt that is improved, um, then it can simply draw out all the pimples or all the toxins in the skin to come out and be cured. And this is a part of what's happening in society. For example, when there was the White March, there was also rituals to ritually abuse children again, right during that year, right during the White March, because there were attempts to corrupt the portal through that. And that it can be very sexually frustrating. So all aboard, you sexually frustrated people that try to enjoy sensuality or even connect with our non-erotic self and are bombarded with all kinds of contents and frequencies and things that are not really our own authentic, healthy, happy nervous system self. And because of the artist thing, there are a lot of mixes even with the consciousness says. Those who saw the video where they see my face, you could have seen an additional consciousness um, to my consciousness. Then I'm saying that because if you felt like, hey, there's something weird with her face, no, you're not imagining. Okay, you're not imagining. Um, when it comes to my voice, I think a lot of people see that, and it's not only me. I ran into several and many people to whom it happens, particularly people that are energy sensitive, whether because of trauma or not. And there are attempts to basically to siphon life energy and to bring the life energy to a frequency that is a void, not a benefic void, but a void of life. Some people even denote that there are deities or demonic entities involved. Um, maybe like um, it can both be that people can appear as, or the use of technology can appear as. Um, and it's important for me to present a discourse from an open and um, kind of age of air point of view, which does not fall into any particular convention and allows for various um, various phenomena to be covered without having to force them into a particular dogma or one particular theory that unifies all of them before we actually understood everything. Um, Now, because of the repetitive patterns of the ritual abuse and the trauma, those repetitive patterns can co-occur, particularly around healing, which is beyond disturbing. People call it spiritual warfare. Yes, this is so. So some people refer to the mental plane of themselves. Some people refer to um, the distinct consciousnesses. And I'd like to emphasize that neither of these things is wrong or right, as long as we don't try to enforce one worldview um, on the particular conglomerate. Um, and as long as we do not ignore ritual satanic abuse and not satanic abuse, um, okay, and the existing, once we don't ignore the science or deny the science, we can actually find the authentic alternative explanations when they exist, and also acknowledge when the corruption exists, because it's not about gaslighting ourselves that it doesn't exist or that it's only in one's mind or all these things. I mean, if it helps people, that's okay. They can offer it as that what helps them. Okay, fantastic if it does. But it's not going to cover that for all people. And being aware of that and being aware of the attempts to silence the ones that speak. And here's the thing, when people try to silence the ones that speak, they try to do so for a reason. And a reason is not because somebody is imagining. Okay? Okay, if somebody was imagining, they wouldn't try to silence them. Um, this is because this is a part of rituals that are used to basically funnel the natural life energy and sexual energy of people away from their well-being, growth, prosperity, trying new things, okay, growing, developing healthy relations. and those rituals do go as far as the surrounding. Now, the more awareness there is of that, the more, the less, the more challenging it is to, um, how should I say that? It's very challenge. It's very challenging to uh, get people that are authentically connecting with themselves, not shaming themselves for being sexual, not in an ego trip, okay? Not not trying to silence one another. Okay, then those people are more difficult to control, to extort, um, and there are you're gonna notice that, for example, that do they not try? Yes, they try. And they love pinpointing at the already prepared ground for when that person, let's say, oh, in 1996, what was through that person now? Let's say when Pluto is going through somebody's 12th house, you Pisces ascendants, including myself, okay, is going to pinpoint, or every planet is going to pinpoint at the various times. Oh, this is what happened when Neptune was here. This is what happened when Saturn was here. This is what happened when Jupiter was last year. This is what happened when Mars was last year. And those are also the cycles of basically um, dissolving those congestions and not staying in the triggered nervous system. Today, for example, I read we had Rom who was kidnapped, raped, and tortured during 7th of October. Then he goes to a club. Um, Now, trauma, person been through trauma, somebody tries to calm him down because they just closed the gates. He didn't find the floor, and they closed the gates. And then someone puts a hand, trying to comfort him, puts a hand on his chest. It's not something you do to a person that went through rape. He sets off an A bomb. Now, what happened when he sets off an A bomb? He calls his he calls him names. He calls the lady names, and those names are usually going to be what? Whore, prostitute, all these things that he was when they were raping him. Then he was the whore and the prostitute. But the person was just set off, and then they had to take control over him, which would set him off even more. Um, Now, why did these people that were in charge of the security of a club not know not to touch a person that went through trauma or that could have gone through rape, even from coming to comfort and calm, not to create physical touch, definitely not in a way that would restrain or trigger, definitely not without asking. Um, and that's because who was to teach them if those that are supposed to teach them are a part of those people doing those rituals to funnel the wealth of society through rape into their hands? Okay, the shiny cars but nothing in them. Now, also, I want to talk about the fact that those things can create very weird, relatable experiences. Okay, and in fact, perhaps that's what they're meant to do. And this is where the fact that a certain experience is relatable Doesn't mean that we should not defend our boundaries or definitely not go with certain people. I know that there's a lot of nervous system hacking, hypnosis, and so on, um, done on people or to get information out of people. So people suddenly hear themselves like say something and then they're like not knowing why they say that or why did they even answer a certain question. Don't blame yourself if it happens to you. Just come out of the freeze or come out of the um, this type of hypnosis thingy as soon as you can, and assess the situation or get connected. Um, More things that I can say about this. Yes, there's sometimes are attempts to use what people have said against them and trying to perpetuate scenarios and all those things. Well, essentially, those those things are only leading to people manifesting basically the opposite of the constricting situation. Um, okay, the illusion that if one would not speak, then everything would be okay. It's a treason called. It doesn't work. Like I really tried to say, okay, let's say let this go. Let's see what happens. Now they trigger again. Um, and again, those things were also used so that people, I don't know, would not speak under. Uh, um, how should I say that? Or would not deliver information. I'm like, that's not. Uh, how should I say that? Nobody is going to keep your secret if you are a rapist. And if they do, it's going to be beyond easy to get that secret out. In fact, every sovereign, grounded person that talks to a person that had certain weird experiences and they're just open and curious, the truth will start to leak. The people will start to disassociate from their disassociation. Okay? That's just going to happen. And then if they fear that there is security sensitive information that will like to begin with, if they rape their intelligence people, then of course information is going to leak. Raping people is not securing information. Okay, that's not a form of encryption, um, because people will always aspire to have a good energy flow, and that cannot happen within a too secretive society. That's what I have to say about this. Um, yes, there's also use of drugs and psychedelics um, by those rituals that can give a psychedelic effect to people that do not take psychedelics. And um, by the way, some of these things can be accidentally positive because because it's psychedelic. But that was mainly to try to get people to engage in activities that are not the activities that they would take part in. and try to do that to entire society, because then entire society is extortable. Okay, think about, for example, people that were raped. They can tend to either avoid sex altogether or actually have um, sex that they didn't necessarily want to have with people. Okay, and um, and when that is being, and if a person like that, let's say, tries to have a relationship, they can cheat because of that reason, because they try to, as they go to embodied sexuality, it takes a lot of it takes a lot. Okay, it takes a lot of meeting our needs adaptively and so on and so forth. And then if there was an addictive pattern, that it can actually be released on an onset, because they recontact their sexuality, so now they have to face that, and that can cause, for example, cheating or cheating patterns, that have to do either because of partners, but it can even have to do with attempts to mind control them, that looks as a third party or looks as cheating, and those are used to trafficking. So those are real deal. Um, that's a real deal because they're used in extortion cults. Um, Again, if somebody's feeling like something around their sensuality is not completely, something threatens their being completely sovereign, they're not imagining, and the awareness is what sets the tone. Um, and if people think, oh, should I see a professional? Well, there's a reason they say one has to be sovereign enough to go to therapy, or healthy enough to go to therapy. And that reason is because why do you think the therapist is more sovereign than you are? And if those that are behind extortion calls do it for wealth consolidation on resources allocation, then certification and a job is a resource. Authority in society is a resource. Okay, they don't allow people to get these certifications and authorities without mind controlling them. When people are in trauma situation, they want to stand in their power, and the illusion of power is what is basically being traded in those extortion codes. And I think for Annika Lucas about that, she said um, all they have to offer is the illusion of power, and 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 so we can't just kind of like fight power with power. Um, that's definitely an insight to keep in mind. And yet, to achieve that level of flow, we do need to be authentic with ourselves when we are disempowered. So sometimes being reactive is actually closer to being authentic than trying to pretend that we didn't, that we're not affected. Um, and sometimes fake it till you make it works. Like, I don't know, whatever works for people. Um, More to say about this. Yeah, the people that try to control people, using technology or whatever. That's a lot of MK Often, MK Ultra, and similar projects. Okay, it can be similar projects that are different names. Um, those are the familiar projects, but um, how should I say that? There is an accumulating effect to these type of activities. Okay, and I can give you an example of somebody that tried to grow. Um, I think it was a deer, and that deer is not meant to be a pet. And as they were trying to grow that deer, in the beginning, when they were a child, everything was okay. But the mistake that they did was to try to keep that deer um, in their house without providing for deer. It's the place's nature, but without providing for them a place that is really compatible for them as to their needs, not as to what is projected on that deer. And then that deer began to be violent to them. Okay, that deer grew and began to be violent to them. And that's the thing, because we cannot mix care and control here. If you don't see a person and treat a person as a sovereign human being, and you try to turn that person into someone who's not sovereign human being, then that can have an accumulating effect. Okay? Now, again, I'm not talking about kinky settings where people have agreed to certain things. That necessitates sovereignty, that necessitates communication. That's not the situation. And when that's not the situation, it has the accumulative effect of the orcas that turn over the yachts of the billionaires. Because if you think that thinking that because somebody doesn't do anything about a situation because they don't know what to do about that doesn't mean that they consent. And to think that there is love in a situation like that, there isn't. Love can only be between sovereign people. Mixing care and control in that particular way um, can have an accumulating effect that they can lead to an outbreak. Um, and that's the type of energy that got the orcas to turn over the yachts of the billionaires. It's like somebody doesn't like what you do and he can't do anything about that. Now, a little bit of 12th house synastry tips for communication. When there's a 12th house synastry case, certain things can be more difficult to understand um, because it's somebody's blind spot. And when we're sitting on somebody's blind spot, we feel unseen.